The last topic for our course is A360 Cloud Rendering. This is software as a service in which Autodesk renders your images for you on their servers. This is not a free service, so you do have to sign up for Autodesk A360. And once you've done that and purchased the appropriate credits, you will sign in inside 3ds Max. And additionally, I'm also signed in at the browser. So you can see I'm at the rendering.360.autodesk.com website, and I'm currently logged in. Back in 3ds Max, I've got a scene that is ready to render, and I've set it up so that it looks good in Mental Ray. This is exactly the same scene as we had in the previous movie. The only real difference is that I have moved the camera around a little bit. The A360 rendering engine is a physically based renderer similar to ART. However, they're mutually incompatible. You can render Mental Ray Arch and Design materials in A360, but you cannot render physical materials. Let's go ahead and do a rendering. We've got a button here on the main toolbar, Render in the Cloud. And when you click that, it's the same as going into the Render Setup dialog and choosing A360 Cloud Rendering Mode from the pull-down here. Whatever credits you have will be listed here, and you'll see an indicator as to whether you're signed in or not. Select a camera from this pull-down list. We only have Phys Camera 001. Then we want to choose our render quality. Let's do standard. For the image size, I'm going to choose a custom size, and I'll make it 1280 by 720 using a 16 by 9 aspect ratio. We'll use advanced exposure, which means we can change the exposure after the rendering is finished. And the file format, we'll choose PNG. We can test the scene compatibility at this point and see if there are any errors. And we did get a few errors. There's a shape object that's not renderable. That's not a problem. We'll see that the RGB multiply node that's in the shading network is not supported. And then, most alarmingly, gradient ramp and noise are not supported. If I was working in production right now, I would stop what I was doing, go back to these objects, and bake those textures into high-resolution bitmaps. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to ignore those error messages, close the dialog, and then since we've set up all of the parameters we want, we go ahead and click the render button. And it has to upload the file to the server, so that might take a little while. This file is something on the order of 20 or 30 megabytes, so it'll take a few minutes to upload. We do get those error messages once again. Once the upload is completed, we're taken directly to that file, which is rendering in progress in the cloud. And here it is. There's the name of the file, and there's the image in progress. If we click on this little arrow, we get a pull-down menu in which we can choose different options. Right now, because the rendering's not finished, the only thing I can do is cancel. If we click on the thumbnail, we will see a larger image, and now we can see the actual render happening in real time. Our standard quality A360 cloud render has completed, and I notice right away that there is a discrepancy between the lighting here and in my 3ds Max scene. The sun here is coming from directly overhead. That's certainly an issue. We would probably have better results if we used photometric lighting rather than the sun and sky. But let's take one last look at what we can do with what we have, and that is adjust the exposure. Back up here in the thumbnail, click on that down-facing arrow and choose Adjust Exposure. And then once our preview is loaded, we can play around with the exposure of this shot after it's been rendered. And I can, for example, pump up the highlights, give it a little bit more saturation, and change the white point, which is the color balance or white balance. Make it a little bit warmer. If we're happy with that exposure, then we'll click Apply down here. And then we'll need to scroll back up. We may need to wait for that to calculate, but once it's finished, we can now download the image. Once again, click on the down arrow and choose Download Image. Let's save it into our current project in the Render Output folder. I'll right-click to make a new folder and give it a name, 0505 A360 Cloud Render. Hit Enter, and then double-click to enter that folder, and then click Save to save the file out. Now we've got a local copy of that file. We can open it up here in the Windows Explorer interface. I can double-click on that file and open it in the default viewer. And here it is, the A360 rendering. I'll just maximize that. And that is a draft quality rendering, really not a standard quality, but it calculated in the cloud. We didn't have to use any of our local computing resources. There are some limitations, but depending upon what you're doing, it may save you some time and effort to render in the cloud. And that concludes our chapter on rendering, and it also finishes our whole course on 3ds Max 2017 New Features.